Can't remember what it is.
Okay. So I just started the recording. This is April 5th, which is 1 month before school ends. I think Monday, the 5th of May. Well, it's probably not the 5th, or it's the 3rd of May is the last day of class officially.
That came up fast.
I know. Well, it's like my son is in college. He said not too long ago, he said, you know, it seems like every semester is really slow and then suddenly just picks up and we're done.
Yeah, it just ramps up out of nowhere, and before you know it, you're like almost there, and it's, I don't know.
I mean, it's just, you know, time is not strictly linear. That's why there's something called Kairos. Chronos is that idea of sort of you know, time that where a second equals a second, and but we definitely do not experience most time in that way. So, although I guess that's probably why we need watches and clocks, because it just pulls us back to the strict time setting, because otherwise we would get lost in everything going on. Oh, so you're in a space, I see, Jay.
Yeah, I'm home for the rest of the day anyway. I'll leave again tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks like you have a nice setup.
Yeah, this is my little study area.
Yeah. I always put these backgrounds on because my study is such a mess. But then when I watch the recordings, you know, I'm moving around in the picture. It doesn't. I find this picture works a little bit better, but I have purchased a green screen and I'm going to see if that makes my backgrounds work better. Has anybody ever used a green screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that keeps, I mean, you know, that's what they do on like the
just make sure you're not wearing a green shirt when you use your green screen, or you're going to be a floating head.
I'm sorry, what?
Don't wear a green shirt when you're using a green screen, or you're going to be a floating head. So many people forget about that. It's so funny.
I will, well, I'll experiment. That'll be because, well, it was supposed to come tomorrow, but it seems to be, it's going to be delayed.
Your video lectures just keep getting better and better.
Jay, are you trying to like,
no, I'm not trying to soften you up or anything. I'm just saying that's just a sincere observation.
Well, I am trying to self-assess and revise and, you know, respond appropriately.
That's what it takes.
You know, I'm the senior most person in my department. I'm not the oldest because I came here when I was 2 years old, but you know, some of these younger faculty, I think they assume that I'm supposed, you know, that I would not know how to use any technology and I would need all this help. And I like to show off. Of course, I like using technology. If there had been some kind of instructional technology degree or something when I was coming up, or the focus had been on document design and all that kind of thing, I would have definitely studied that as I was growing up. But as I've mentioned before, being a college professor allows me to study all sorts of things and just say it's my job. So, hi, Flavie. All right, so who's here? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, my standard 5.
Yeah, this is an awesome class size.
Yeah. Well, there are, about 5 other people out in the who
In the
never can,
the
yeah, who
asynchronous
are
world.
doing this asynchronously, who are never able to come to class. And that's why I have these little quizzes, and that's why I'm recording everything, of course.
Yeah.
Although, recording even for people who can come all the time is a great idea, so that
It is.
you can,
Yeah.
for one thing, I can self-assess, but for another, you can, we can all look back and see. So the quiz, most people have taken the quiz, but not everybody, and you have till tonight. And I will make some comments about the things that people had difficulty with on Wednesday, but I won't do that today since some people haven't finished.
That quiz was a dandy.
It was too hard?
I
Too long, I think.
I don't know how to
column A and column B.
What?
Is that a little from column A and a little from column B?
Yeah, it was doable. I mean, it was a challenge, and that's good. But yeah, it was a dandy.
Yeah, for me, it just took a long time to because I was just thinking a lot.
Yeah, sure.
The purpose of it is not to so much assess, but to get you to think a lot, to make you actually think through the topics. And I guess the thing that, I mean, we can try to do that in a regular situation, but when it's in a quiz, somehow the intensity is more. And so you maybe pay attention more, I guess.
Feels more dire at that point.
Yeah. But and I change the quiz each time I teach it so that I'm hopefully covering things that I still ended up teaching. The blogs are also due today, where you applied structure. And I think, yeah, do you see where, no, you don't see my videos, pictures of you, but the recording does. So I have to move it out of the way. Okay. So what that meant was rewriting or discussing how the piece of rhetoric is structured. And I started a new plan for the quizzes. I edited the same quiz. So this question is going to come up even if you're not doing it on classes for March 31st or later. But there'll be a question sometime during the class that I'll ask everybody to answer in the quiz, also in the class. Why did that not open? Circling. Uh-oh. There we go. So here's where we are on the schedule. You will see that I somehow magically put no assignments in this week, no completion assignments in this week. And that's actually because I want you at this point to start deciding which of the 2 pieces that you've been working with, and obviously the opinion piece you've worked more with, but which of the 2 pieces you've been working with you want to actually treat as the paper for the class. And so that's what this means. Drafts of analysis or opinion paper due for sharing Sunday, April 18th, which would be the end of the 12th week. And so at that point, you want to make it as good as you can. And you can pick either the opinion piece or the piece of rhetorical analysis. And then I will do a more traditional writing class. I'm gonna have you turn in drafts, you'll give each other feedback. And you'll see here that basically, so we have 2 weeks on style and then 2 weeks working on the paper and then the end. And there will not be an exam, there will be a final reflection piece for the course. And our exam was, a Monday 12:15 class was scheduled. The exam is scheduled for Monday, May 10th. And I guess it would be appropriate then for me to make it the reflection due at that time. Questions just about where we are in the schedule? So I divided up the reading piece on style to the first half and the second half. Basically, the second half is more where he is giving examples of style analyses. And the first half is talking about all these different ideas of style. And it is a chapter that can kind of overwhelm you because it has all these lists of, particularly the lists of figures of speech. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize all those figures of speech. I can never, I'm good if I can think about metaphor and metonymy. So I heard this, I've heard actually in the news is this big issue of passports for vaccine passports. Oh, that reminds me. Okay, I'm going to send you all this link.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
UALR has, this is the sign up thing for their vaccine stuff. And it's actually today, this afternoon. Oh, I screwed. Oh dear. Well, there are actually spots after this class. So if you're nearby, which most of you are not, I'm going to put it in the chat anyway, in case it would help, or you could send it to your friends. So in the news, there's all this discussion about vaccine passports is what they're calling them now. That is, some kind of card that gets you access to places. And like everything else in this universe lately, it's become a big political thing. But I just really appreciated the way this sentence was phrased in the Democrat Gazette article. It shows us quite clearly that this is a rhetoric of stasis of definition, so that this is what they actually said. The argument over whether passports are a sensible response to the pandemic or represent government overreach echoes the disputes over the past year about mass shutdown orders and the vaccines. And so that if you'd see these passports are a sensible response to the pandemic, then if you define it that way, then you think they're a great idea. That then leads you to an evaluative judgment, which would be the next stasis. But if you see it as representing governmental overreach, then you see it as a terrible idea. And this is why we're just kind of stuck in these standstills where everybody's arguing about how to define it. And so nothing can actually happen and go forward. And so what's happening is, because it's obviously a political issue, and very few entities, if at all, are establishing it as policy. Although there are a couple colleges now that are creating it, universities that have created it as policy, and there are a couple towns that have done it as policy. But in any case, I thought that was really interesting. And if anytime you see an example of something that really applies to the concepts of the course, it would be really great to bring them in and we can talk about it. Okay. Have you had any arguments over this particular topic with anybody?
Well, you know, these subjects are just, people are just so charged up about things. You just hesitate to even try to talk about things with people because people just are so childish these days.
There's no reasoning almost. Like you can't even have a simple conversation about it devolving into like a ridiculous over the top fight. And you're just like, okay. I mean, I like to know someone's point of view. I'm like, why is this such a bad thing? I mean, most European countries are going to make this a thing, and I can't really blame them because they're all so close to each other. And I want to go to Europe probably even the next 2 years just for the sake of going. And if I have to have it, then fine, make it happen. Not a big deal.
And if you try to pick apart somebody's argument, they blow up and throw a fit.
Well, especially, I mean, literally, if you're picking it apart, you know, that suggests that you're maybe disagreeing with them. So yeah, they're gonna throw it.
I laugh at my military friends who freak out about this because they're like, it's just another way to track us. Like, dude, you're in the military. You're already being tracked. Shush. Just shush. Being ridiculous. Obviously, the first rule of
the fact that they're tracking us.
Well, also the first rule of also talking to someone is just avoid saying the ridiculous. That's how you get it to devolve really fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, also the whole part where people are like, it's just another way to track. It's like you got credit cards, you got a cell phone, you're already in the system. You got a driver's license. I don't know why it's a big
cell phone. I mean, it's incredible how I mean, you know, that's continually argued over, but if one,
you also have to have the real ID now just to board an airplane. So, right. I mean, you know, it's just another thing, and I get it. It kind of feels like an overreach, but for the sake of other states being able to have control of their own areas, I get it.
There is an organization called Braver Angels. And there's one, it's a national organization, and they're a faculty member in applied communication, Dr. April Chatham Carpenter, has been part of creating a Braver Angels of Arkansas. They're actually having a discussion tonight, and I will forward the email about that. And what the Braver Angels goal is to enable some conversation. Here, in fact, this would be good. So their goal is to build a house united, by which they mean at this time of crisis, we need more than civility, empathy, and goodwill. We need courage. That is, as you all were saying, that you can't even talk about it anymore because people just blow up. And what they're saying is that you need to be brave enough to actually talk about it. But what they are encouraging, it's not that they're trying to get everybody to convince each other, but they're rather just trying to get them to be able to talk to each other. We bring Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. So you see a red and a blue. I'm not sure what this is.
I've started doing something experimental, and it seems to be somewhat working in terms of trying to have dialogue with people without getting into a big brawl about it. I've tried starting to just listen more and not really forcefully engage the other person, and just sort of like passively disagree, just like saying stuff like, yeah, I can sort of see how you might come up with that, or something like that, sort of like not agreeing with them, but not just like stuffing them into a corner either.
Right.
And they know, and that sort of forces them into a position of sort of evaluating their own position, because you're not agreeing with them, but at the same time it doesn't start an argument, and I'm just experimenting with that.
So this group, they have these online skills training workshops, the powerful practice of empathetic conversation, clarifying differences while preserving the relationships between us. So their point is you listen and just try to understand what it is. That doesn't mean you agree with it.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean you're trying to disagree and prove them wrong. You're just trying to understand where it is. And then at some point, try to see, where there's some kind of common. And this idea of clarifying differences. And so then they have these testimonials. It's basically a movement, they're saying. Connecting with others who care about the fabric of our American experience was deeply fulfilling. So the bottom line point is that everybody agrees that America is something worth saving, and we believe in it. But
yeah, because seriously, if we
we have different points of view about it.
Yeah, if we can't start finding some middle ground, this situation could just go south quickly.
So anyway, I will forward you the email. It's, an online discussion with some journalists, local journalists. It's Arkansas. It's the Arkansas group is having a webinar, or I think it's online discussion of some kind.
Yeah, we need some guidance.
Okay, so back to the topic at hand. We are shifting now to talk about a different one of the canons, style. And I guess I'll click on that. This takes me to the Silva Rhetorica website. And Silva Rhetorica is the forest of rhetoric. And I believe that that's a quote from somewhere at some point. The way this website is set up, the link, it only does one link. And so you get to the home page, but you've got all these things along the side, including all the rhetorical figures on here. Do you realize we're still in A's here? I'm scrolling. Here's the B's. So as we talk about some of these rhetorical figures, you don't have to memorize them all, but this is a very good resource for it. And basically what they are, this is a, it's a dictionary. Maybe it's a little bit larger than a dictionary. And silver, you know, it's a forest. So it definitely, everything connects to everything else. So you could definitely get sort of lost in the forest of Rhetorica, because it constantly shows you how the different terms relate to each other. So along the top here, we have the 5 canons: invention, range and style, memory, delivery, style, and then allocutio is the Greek, I think, origin. Style concerns the artful expression of ideas. If invention addresses what is to be said, style addresses how this will be said. Now, from the beginning of rhetoric and literature immemorial, there's been discussions about the relationship between content and form, and whether or not you have a form that's like a cup that you fill the content into, and that whether you could actually separate the two, or whether you could, whether you have to always think about them as related. And I mean, it's just one of those perpetual debates, and interesting things to think about with any kind of rhetorical artifact. From a rhetorical perspective, style is not incidental, superficial, or supplementary. Style names how ideas are embodied in language and customized to communicative contexts. And the chapter that, chapter 5, actually covers these very same things. So we're going to talk about these very same things here. The virtues of style, the levels of style, which would be diction, the qualities of style, and the figures of speech or ornateness. So, and here's my list of them. And these are the topics of the chapter as well. So virtues, we're going to talk about today. Diction. I hope everybody's heard the term diction. What is diction?
Somebody?
Well, okay, so diction is word choice, and thinking about the word choice that you might have. And we think a lot of times about the levels of diction. So we could talk about a very formal level of diction, a very informal. The figures of speech and thought, like metaphor, metonymy, synecdoche, charismus, whatever, rhythm, and then types of style. And so today I would like to talk a little bit about virtues and figures of speech and thought. So I thought I'd start by some examples. Can you guys read this? Is it, or see this? Yes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is Jonathan Edwards, who is an American rhetorician. You know, he's usually included in lists of rhetoricians, but he was a minister in the early Puritan age. And all his sermons, or many of his sermons, were kept. So just, I'm going to read a portion and just see if what you can say about the style? Concerning these words, I would observe three things. One, when it was that God commanded Noah, to which these words refer, it was the building of an ark according to the particular direction of God, against the time when the flood of waters should come, and the laying up of food for himself, his families, and the other animals which were to be preserved in the ark. We have the particular commands which God gave him respecting this affair from the 14th verse. Make thee an ark of wood. And then I'm going to shift down to this paragraph. The building of the ark, which was enjoined upon Noah that he and his family might be saved, was a great undertaking. The ark was a building of vast size, the length of it being 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A cubit till of late was by learned men reckoned to be equal to 1.5 feet of our measure. But lately, some learned men of our nation have traveled into Egypt, blah, 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 and it turns out that it's like twice as big. What can you say about this style?
Maybe like, I think of like scholarly or educated, like, I don't know, like the word choice is kind of um like words like vast and like breadth, like they're kind of like older words, I would say. So
So they sounds a little archaic, maybe. And you said scholarly, meaning what? So the word, what would you say about the word choice that makes it sound scholarly?
well, like it's like talking about like the different measurements and stuff. And
is it just word choice that makes it sound that way? Anybody else want to hop in there?
It's just really formal.
It's really formal.
Yeah.
It's definitely
And
not a casual conversation.
and it's got a sort of an element of timelessness to it also.
What makes it sound so formal? What can you say about the sentence structure? The building of the ark, which was enjoined upon Noah, that he and his family might be saved, was a great undertaking. The ark, the ark was a building of vast size, the length of it being 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. Okay, so that was one sentence. So
longer, more complex sentences.
Very complex sentences with a lot of interruptions. You know, it's not usually subordinate constructions, but it's sort of, sometimes I think they call it a periodic, where they start and then he keeps adding and he keeps adding and he keeps adding. So there's a lot of things we could say. We could talk about the word choice. We could talk about, which is diction to some extent. We could talk about the tone, maybe, that scholars, you know, we talk about the formality. We could talk about the syntax chosen for it. And we could talk about the time period it sounds like. Okay, here's another piece of writing. This is from my other class. I don't know what's going on with my computer today. Okay. All right. So right away, you see this looks different. The other thing was a transcript of a written sermon. Now, this is something that was written. This is a legal opinion. And so it has all the legal apparatus at the beginning. After the name, it's a case, Yagi versus BVD Company. And it came out of North Carolina in 1970. And then some more legal information, you know, which attorneys were representing each side. Then the author of this legal opinion, which is this Judge Parker. And this is where it starts. The North Carolina Statute of Frauds, GS Section 22.2, insofar as pertinent to the appeal, provides, quote, all contracts to sell or convey any lands, tenements, or hereditaments, or any interest in or concerning them, shall be void unless said contract or some memorandum or note thereof be put in writing and signed by the party to be charged therewith, or by some other person by him thereto lawfully authorized, unquote. Defendant appellant did not specially plead the statute of frauds, but in its answer denied in the alleged contract to convey. The general denial invoked the statute as effectively as if it had been expressly pleaded and thereby imposed by plaintiff the burden of showing a written contract sufficient to comply with its requirements. Hines v. Tripp, Hunt v. Hunt, Picklesheimer versus Picklesheimer, Jamerson versus Logan. Moreover, defendant's failure to object to testimony, blah, 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 blah. Okay. What can you say about this style?
Very formal and professional.
Very formal and professional.
It has a very specific format for it too, that it has to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And those are definitely some complex sentences.
Those are definitely some complex sentences. And there is an incredible amount of specialized terminology, which may make it almost impossible for somebody who doesn't know the legal terminology to understand what's being said, even though they understand English.
Or even harder to compose.
Yeah, well, yes, it would be very difficult to impose. Now, this is from 1970. I will tell you that opinions have moved in a different direction these days. They don't have such a legalistic sort of sound usually, but I picked this for that reason. I'm using it in my other class. So now the quote is the statute, and statutory language has its own style. What can you say about statutory language?
Well, it's got like lots of like sections and subsections and things like that.
Yeah. And then even within the particular thing, the particular subsection that you're looking at, which in this case is 22.2, you have breaking it down so that they're making sure that they cover each possible option. Of course, you have here, the North Carolina statutes are much more archaic sounding than Arkansas statutes. I thought that was interesting. I hadn't read any. Because you don't necessarily see the therewiths or hereditaments in or thereto stuck into it. So, but those words therewith and thereto, they really announce it being a legal style. And here's a third piece of style.
Ladies and gentlemen, Virginia Tech University Distinguished Professor of English and celebrated author, Nikki Giovanni, will deliver closing remarks.
Virginia Tech. We are sad today, and we will be sad for quite a while. We are not moving on. We are embracing our mourning. We are Virginia Tech. We are strong enough to stand tall tearlessly. We are brave enough to bend to cry, and sad enough to know we must laugh again. We are Virginia Tech. We do not understand this tragedy. We know we did nothing to deserve it, but neither does a child in Africa dying of AIDS. Neither do the invisible children walking the night away to avoid being captured by a rude army. Neither does the baby elephant watching his community be devastated for ivory. Neither does the Mexican child looking for fresh water. Neither does the Appalachian infant killed in the middle of the night in his crib in the home his father built with his own hands, being run over by a boulder because the land was destabilized. No one deserves a tragedy. We are Virginia Tech. The Hokie Nation embraces our own and reaches out with open heart and hands to those who offer their hearts and minds. We are strong and brave and innocent and unafraid. We are better than we think and not quite what we want to be. We are alive to the imagination and the possibility. We will continue to invent the future through our blood and tears, through all this sadness. We are the Hokies. We will prevail. We will prevail. We will prevail. We are Virginia Tech.
What can you say about this style?
It's too fast.
It was too fast.
Yeah, she could have let some of those points linger just a little bit.
What do you remember of it?
I couldn't understand it very well.
It's probably too soft.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll let you look at the words. For some reason, I can't get my, I gotta figure out what to do with the sound. Oh, I know what I need to do. I think I need to shift the sound to the computer. So what can you say about the sound? I'm sorry, the style of her speech poem.
Yeah, Morgan's chiming in there about chat.
Yeah, that she was saying that they use repetition.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of repetition. How does the repetition kind of make you pay attention to it?
There's just no escape.
Yeah. So I should have probably told you the context. This was
After
a
the
memorial for the Virginia Tech shooter,
Yeah.
which was 2000, I don't know, 7 or something.
Yeah, 2007.
Yeah.
Wow. It's been a long time now.
Yeah, it's surprising. It's definitely a totally different level of word choice and syntax and tone. I think Morgan had added in the chat. There is a rhythm going on too, so that, you know, we are sad today, we are strong, and, you know, we're the Hokies, whatever they are. And then there's long passages that go really fast, and that's part of her sort of tone is, you know, just listing all these horrible things that happen that are not fair. And, you know, how do we deal with this? And then returning back to Virginia Tech. So that was just a sort of a introduction to thinking about how different styles are used in different situations. We return always to the rhetorical situation. The rhetorical situation calls for different levels of sound and style. And so as we're talking about style, we're going to just talk about basically what this gives us is some different concepts to think about with style. So we could talk about virtues, dictions, figures of speech and thought, rhythm and tone, types of style. And now the first one we're going to talk about are the virtues of style. Now the virtues of style, basically these are there's sets of criteria that we can use to talk about something. Or we could talk about sets of norms that we use to talk about them. So we live at a time when correctness is a value that is really highly praised in the educational system with regard to rhetoric. How many of you have interacted with people and told them that you were a writing student or an English student or a rhetoric student, which they probably didn't know what that meant. And the first thing they said is, oh, I better watch my grammar.
Yeah, at work in the chats, and I'm like, I'm not sitting here grading you. Plus, it's chats. I mean, be as informal as you want to. It's a chat.
Right. So the most common understanding people have in our culture, I think, about what, the teaching of writing or the teaching or the study of English or the study of rhetoric is that, there are these English teachers out there that are saying, this is correct and that's not correct. And, everybody has experiences with correctness things. And I don't necessarily think this is bad. I just think that for a long time, the educational system emphasized above everything else, what they emphasized in terms of language use was correctness. And as long as you could get something written without errors, then it was supposed to be good. Now, there's been an attempt to redefine correctness as not some kind of absolute thing, but rather something that's appropriate to the rhetorical situation. Just like Micah said, that if you say you work in the chats for who?
Oh, well, to communicate with each other, because I work from home and it's all online based. We chat to each other on the thing,
Right.
whether it's just to entertain each other throughout the day or get clarification on what to do when something's wrong. But yeah, so it's very informal. I mean, who cares about the punctuation or the if you capitalize this first letter, as long as you get your point across and we know what you're talking about, that's what matters.
Right. I had a discussion once with a colleague about the issue of correctness in Blackboard discussion posts. My colleague said, well, it's a discussion post. I don't worry at all about correctness. And I said, well, I guess I'm an old fuddy-duddy, but this is not just a discussion between friends or colleagues or whatever. This is a discussion in an educational context. And so I think it has to be, one step above, somehow above the
Facebook posting.
Yes, Facebook posting, exactly. Now, I personally have been having more and more troubles if I do anything on my phone, getting those capital letters. It's too many, movements of my thumb. So I tend to avoid capital. And so, you know, I'm probably having to eat my words a little bit, but, you know, within an educational context, it seems to me appropriate to expect correctness. The other thing that we tend to do is to talk about it from a rhetorical viewpoint, that is, that it establishes your ethos. And if you notice my criteria on the rubrics, I try to say that if you have something that has lots and lots of errors in a formal educational submission, then you undermine your own ethos. That is, that it looks like you are too lazy or disrespectful or whatever to take the time to get things as correct. Why is correctness a rhetorical thing? Why would it matter whether one is correct or not? Why does it matter to your audience?
You want to be taken seriously. I mean, if you're going to be incorrect, I mean, how am I going to take that seriously? You obviously didn't put the time in to make your point.
Right.
So.
And it's also a way to demonstrate correctness to others so that they'll know what's correct.
Okay. Also, it is sometimes very difficult to understand something if it's not correct. And I mean, some of the rules are stupid. You know, we all know ending a sentence with a preposition was a silly rule that people came up with. The idea that you can't split infinitives was a silly rule that one individual person came up with based on rules from, well, a lot of languages, most of the Romanic languages that came out of Roman, out of Latin, infinitives are one word, like French or Spanish. The infinitive of doing something in the infinitive form in French is one word with the ER at the end. So if you're talking about to walk, it's marcher, whereas the verb form would just be wash. So you can't split an infinitive in a Romanic language. And so that's where they came up with that silly rule, because you can't do it in Latin, you shouldn't be allowed to do it in English. Well, English verb structure is more based on the Germanic side of our background, which allows us to put in all these extra little words everywhere. And so, you know, having broken up infinitives or split infinitives, to boldly walk where no one goes. I guess they weren't walking, they were boldly go, to boldly go where what? No man has been, or something. You know, it's totally acceptable. The problem is then once a culture decides that X is correct or not correct, then to violate those expectations can sometimes create a problem. So whoops, correctness is not something that we, well, so correctness is one thing that rhetoricians have certainly talked about, and it is more or less important at different times in the history. Clarity is another value that is very important in educational contexts, and particularly in the and I'd say that our department as a whole would have embraced the value of clarity over the value of correctness, although I think overall we value both. And that becomes a really important thing in talking about technical writing. Ornament, and I guess we're we're not going to have time to talk too much about this right today, but we'll definitely as we go on, is talking about how you make your language sound kind of special, and the textbook calls it distinctive. And I wanted to just show you one here, that on this American Rhetoric website, there's this link to rhetorical figures and sound. And it gives you examples. So they have 40 different ones of these rhetorical figures. We'll start. I've noticed that they have this new ad system. And what they've done is they give you examples, which you see everywhere, but there are also examples in sound. So you can really hear how it affects the rhetoric. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. So it's a metaphor about just basically about sound.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this.
How do the use of figures of speech and let's say metaphor affect rhetoric?
Sometimes it makes something more memorable.
Something more memorable, yeah.
Sometimes it can drive the point home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think parallelism really helps that way.
Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
Now, was somebody laughing at his accent?
I mean, I just now realize who Mayor Crimby from The Simpsons was based off of after hearing that accent.
So I've given you those links as a way so that you can kind of learn what some of those figures are. I would like you now, and this is the quiz question, to go look at your own, the pieces of rhetoric that you are currently analyzing, and see if you see any figures of speech. There are so many different kinds of figures of speech, but maybe the easiest one to do, especially for people sitting right here, is metaphor. See if there is any metaphor or parallelism or any figure of speech that you want to look at. One of these 3,000 over here might be it. And then add them into the chat.
Did you say the piece we're analyzing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you don't have that piece right around, I mean, you could just like look at anything on the web and just see if you can find a figure of speech and post it in the chat. The storm which rages. What does that refer to?
That's referring to the author James Baldwin talking about he knows that there must be a storm raging in the mind of his nephew.
Which probably means some kind of emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys not finding any or just taking a long time to type?
I actually can't find what we were going over. I'm like trying to find the piece we were looking at.
Do you want like a piece or the whole thing?
Just the little piece.
No, okay. Oh, I don't know which one to choose. Okay, she has two.
Is lemonade itself a metaphor?
Is it what?
Is lemonade itself a metaphor?
I don't know. It's kind of I think she kind of ripped it from Maya Angelou's quote where she's like, let me see.
That
Don't
would
know
be so cool.
exactly.
Stared in the mirror and punched it to shatters. So when you guys say you're going to analyze all these things, I go off and listen to it. Well, I don't go off. I open Spotify and listen to it. So I've been listening to Beyonce and I've been listening to Halsey. Halsey is interesting because she mixes her tones so much. That would be an interesting style thing.
This is the quote she got it from. I think that's where she got the inspiration for the title.
Okay. So is that a metaphor in itself?
I don't know. I just thought she was stealing from the quote.
Yeah, no, I mean,
It could be a
quote itself.
metaphor.
I would serve the quote, the saying, you know, if you're given lemonade, I'm sorry, if you're given lemons, make lemonade. Isn't that a metaphoric? That's actually an idiom, I think. It's a figure of speech.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not talking about literal lemons, right?
No.
So, you know, the lemons are metaphors for, you know, bad things that happen.
Okay.
Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Stare and punch, this refers to body. Is, yeah. You know, in songs, a lot of times they can take a metaphor as opposed to maybe, well, it's an extended metaphor, I think, Morgan, is what, you know, you say, well, it's not a metaphor. What is this? Well, I guess it is. It's the punching. The mirror is not a metaphor, but the punching and breaking it into pieces is a metaphor.
She also mentions cutting pieces of her body off with scissors, so that could be something too.
Is that Beyonce or Halsey?
Nightmare with Halsey. I actually like that song a lot.
You like it? Well, nightmare is a common metaphor that we use all the time. It's moves from literal. Okay. Out of War, Kratos has two different weapons. His blades of chaos. Oh, yeah. You don't necessarily think about. Well, you know, when you start talking about visual rhetoric, it's constantly going to be metaphoric, because metaphor is a very visual process. Blades of chaos are metaphors for his past. So does he go from chaos to something else?
Yeah, like when in the beginning of the game, he's using like the Leviathan axe, which is it takes a little bit more precision, I guess, to use in the game. And then you get like the Blades of Chaos, which he used in the previous games. And it's like so easy. You're just like swinging these blades around, and it's like way more easy to use than the axe. So it's kind of like, I don't know, almost like kind of like looking back. I mean, I didn't play the previous games, but like I know that they were a little bit more like his past, like he was very violent, and so yeah.
Interesting. So let us finish. You can keep typing in the chat, but let us finish with a video out of this Argue Lab from
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software.
All right, we are back with more question time at Argue Lab, here with Jay Heinrichs, author of Thank You for Arguing. So this week, it looks like we have it might be a follow-up question to last week when we talked about idioms. And we have someone asking, when you find a fork in the road, take it. Who said that? And is it a figure of speech? But that's an idiom, isn't it?
Yeah, very good, Christina. That is an idiom.
And an idiom is a
being
type
figure
of
speech that's a collection of words that have meaning all its own. So when you find a fork in the road, take it is a wonderful kind of idiom called a yogiism. Yogiism is a kind of nonsensical.
Yeah, code word doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it does. You know, there's like a deeper wisdom behind it, which makes it so wonderful. And this is named after
Yogi Bear?
Yogi Berra.
Oh.
Not Yogi Bear, not the cartoon character. The cartoon character was named after Yogi Berra, famous baseball coach and player.
I didn't know that.
And who had this marvelous way of screwing up English and that ended up with a higher wisdom. And I have to tell you, I cheated. I saw these questions in advance. So because I have such a terrible memory.
Broke into the question database.
I broke into the question database.
No. And create a new password other than I love Ryan Gosling. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, you really is.
Yeah.
Your creepy love for Ryan Gosling was what got me hacking into your piece of paper. Anyway,
no secret.
So I printed out some yogiisms just, because they're so much fun. So Yogi Berra said, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. And, which absolutely makes sense and makes no sense at this time. Okay. You can observe a lot just by watching, which is true. It's deja vu all over again. You've heard that. That is so common.
Yeah, I know that one.
And it's sooner or later, a cliche becomes embedded in the language and becomes an idiom. So idioms kind of have to grow past their awkward adolescence of cliche into becoming just universally accepted so that people don't even smile or groan or whatever they do. It's deja vu all over again. If you don't know where you are going, you will wind up someplace else.
That is very true.
That's true. And then he also said baseball is 90% mental, the other half is physical. Which is true. You have to give 140% or whatever the math is. Okay, and then finally, he actually was really good at malapropisms, which are ways of screwing up the language by misappropriating terms, like using the wrong word, and in ways that made a higher sense. So he's also famous for saying it's after a spectacular loss of the baseball game, it's not the heat, it's the humility. Isn't that great? He was a genius at language by screwing it up. And I think that should give us all hope if we don't have perfect grammar all the time, or if we use the wrong word for something. Now and then, our brain is trying to achieve a higher wisdom through those screw-ups. Yogi Berra, nobody ever did it better.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and put them.
So that was just to give you some examples of figures of speech that have moved into idioms. I think maybe that if the world gives you lemons, then make lemonade might be an example of one of them. And then of course a yogiism somehow would take that. I'll think about that and figure out how to change it into a yogiism. Just to remind you and bring you back to the end, you have till tonight to finish the quiz. You should be finished or finishing on the structure blogs, and you should read chapter 5, the first half. And if you're watching online, then you remember to that there's a little extra question in there to answer in the quiz. Any questions? By the way, in case you're wondering, my clock on my laptop is 5 minutes fast. And so we are 2 minutes over class here, not 7, but just to let you know. So everybody have a great time. I'm going to send you this link about the Braver Angels of Arkansas that you might want to listen to tonight about how to have rhetoric that interacts to discuss these complex topics of our time as opposed to fight about these complex issues of the time. See you later.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.